Formula One's Ferrari engine controversy continues to build ahead of the start of the 2020 season, with the FIA taking the latest step in what is quickly developing into a war that could split the paddock. The FIA has responded to the 7 teams who demanded full disclosure over the confidential settlement reached with Ferrari following an investigation into its 2019 engine. All of the non-Ferrari powered teams said they were shocked and surprised by the nature of the FIA's original announcement, and they made clear they were prepared to take legal action if the next steps in the process were not to their satisfaction. Just a day later, the FIA responded to the teams, and while it defended its right to keep the matter confidential, it also made clear that it had suspicions about Ferrari's engine. However, because Ferrari has denied any wrongdoing, and the FIA felt that taking the matter any further would not guarantee a conclusive outcome, it opted for what it has now called an effective and dissuasive settlement agreement with Ferrari to terminate the proceedings. So while the FIA has made clear its investigation raised concerns that the Ferrari engine was not operating within the limits of the regulations at all times, it added that the complexity of the matter made it a material impossibility to provide definitive proof of a rules breach. The FIA has also talked of negative consequences of a long litigation and wanting to act in the best interests of the World Championship. And while the FIA's judicial rules do allow for this kind of settlement that was reached with Ferrari, its latest explanation is unlikely to be met favourably by the 7 unhappy teams. So what does all this really mean, and what's likely to happen next? Here's our F1 journalist Edd Straw to explain it in more detail.
There's 3 significant things in this FIA statement. The first one is that the FIA has confirmed that it had suspicions the Ferrari power unit was not always running legally in 2019. We've been able to infer that from previous statements, we've drawn those conclusions, but at no point has the FIA said that explicitly. So this ticks that box, we know that's the case. They don't say exactly what, however, or indeed vaguely what. The second point is that the FIA also says that Ferrari denies any wrongdoing and that potentially going down the route of trying to prove this legally could lead to lengthy litigation. Ferrari would obviously stand up against it. Perhaps that implies that it's a very, very difficult thing to prove. We still don't know whether it's in a grey area or whether it's something that's genuinely explicitly over the line, shall we say. So that's what leads to the third point, which is important because we have the question of why it's been dealt with in this way. The FIA has defended its right to do this kind of process whereby they're not doing it in public, they have a private investigation, and then they come up with a secret agreement that will not be disclosed to third parties. Now, of course, how do the teams respond to this? Well, on that point, their statement of yesterday was very, very clear in saying, we brought this to the FIA's attention. So I imagine they will immediately argue that therefore means they're not a third party, they're involved in this. Furthermore, Red Bull will be looking at it thinking, well, hang on a minute, should we have been second in the championship, therefore more money and won more races? Mercedes will say, well, we couldn't have finished any higher in the championship, but did we lose out on some race wins because of this? So there's very, very big implications to this, and I'm sure it will not be considered satisfactory to have this explanation. They'll want to know what Ferrari was suspected of doing and exactly what has been done to prevent it happening again. Now, the FIA might have backed itself into a corner on this one because I'm sure as part of the settlement there will have been legal documentation about how much they can say, etc. So maybe that's locked by confidentiality. But unfortunately, it's the 21st century. This is the top level of sport. Transparency is extremely important. And I think this will not be satisfactory for the teams competitively. It's also not satisfactory for Formula One in terms of the credibility and the transparency. So that accounts for the teams, the fans, the media, all the stakeholders, commercial sponsors, potential commercial sponsors, race promoters. People want to know that what they're seeing is authentic. So there's a very, very big question to be answered here. And I think transparency has not been satisfied on this one. I'm sure there'll be a further response from the teams, unless, of course, their private request to the FIA, which we understand they've also done, has elicited more details, and they're quite happily to go off quietly and say, okay, we think this is acceptable. We know that this won't happen again. We'll take one for the team and consider this is best for the good of Formula One. One thing is for sure, we've had 3 statements on this now. There's going to be some more happening. It's going to be a huge talking point heading to Australia. And I think for my money, while this has kind of inched along a little bit in terms of the FIA giving us some indication of what's going on, it's still barely scratched the surface. The waters are still muddy, and I think there's a lot more to come here in this lengthy saga.
As Ed explained there, this is far from the end of this controversy, so grab yourself some popcorn and get comfortable. Make sure you keep up with all the latest developments on this story at therace.com, and don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel so you won't miss our latest videos. And most importantly, let us know in the comments what you make of this huge story.